How many of these 3 behaviors did you do today? 1. Someone sent you a negative message and you immediately fired off a reply without thinking. 2. You went somewhere you weren't invited or didn't really want to go because you were scared of being left out. 3. You had something inside you and you didn't filter it, you just threw it straight at the person in front of you. If the number came out high, don't feel bad because all 3 are learned habits, and anything learned can be unlearned. Here's the real deal. None of these 3 behaviors makes you a bad person. Day by day, they make you a little less mighty without your knowing it. What I'm talking about today isn't motivation. It's the exact moments your power leaves your hands and the art of calling it back. Even when you don't know it, day after day in small moments, you are giving away a piece of your power. Every time you let someone get under your skin, every time you go after someone you don't really need, every time you talk when it should have been silent, a little slice of power in your hands passes over to the other person. You don't see it because no one ever taught you to. You were taught the opposite. You were taught to speak up louder, to be more visible, to react faster to everything, to be heard in every room. And yet, it was an Italian statesman who wrote, centuries ago, that most often power is won not through noise, but through silence. This is exactly one of the themes Machiavelli explored in The Prince. A big part of real power is knowing when not to show it. Someone who always keeps his hand open shows everyone what he has. Someone who knows when to close it protects the value of what he's holding. And this is no less true of statesmen and historical personages. Every man has the same alternative before him every day on a smaller scale. When you choose to open your hand or to close it, the direction of your entire life will be set. But today, we put an end to this. I'm going to show you 5 behaviors. Not all 5 at once. Even one of them will be enough to visibly change your life. They won't give you a new personality, but they'll restore a balance that's already inside of you, a balance you keep leaving in the little moments of each day. These 5 behaviors are not one formula you apply the same way in every area of your life. A boundary at work may be different than a boundary with family. What's important is that you can ask yourself in each situation, where am I giving my power away right now? The answer will be different each time, but the habit of asking the question takes you to a more conscious place each time. Think about it for a second. Think about the people you really respect in life. Odds are, you're not looking for them amongst the loudest, most visible people in every room. You find them in people who know when to speak and when to shut up, what to pay attention to, and what's worth their time. This entire video is constructed piece by piece to give you just that knowledge. Why this video is different. Let me tell you this now, this is not a motivational video. This is a guide for behavior change. I'm not going to tell you to feel more powerful, because feeling alone doesn't do shit. Instead, I'm going to give you 5 very tangible areas where you spend your attention, how you use silence when you make yourself visible, how you respond to your emotional triggers, and how to use patience as a strategy rather than as a weakness. We'll do 2 real-life examples for each point, talk about where that behavior is healthy and where it crosses into misuse, and I'll give you a little exercise you can try today, right now. Pay attention to which point hits something in you, because usually the point that bothers you the most is the one you need the most. Perhaps you cannot quite gather your attention, perhaps you regret every argument, or perhaps you feel you have to go to every invitation, or perhaps your impatience keeps dragging you into the same mistake over and over. Whatever it is, by the end of this video, you'll have named that area and built a small plan of action around it. This is not a race. You don't need to use all 5 today. These 5 points are not intended to be viewed in sequence, but as a whole that completes itself. Though there is a reason I'm going through them in a particular order. Each one sets the ground for the next. None of these points relate to influencing people or establishing dominance. This is not about controlling the people around you. This is about controlling your own energy, your own reactions, and your own time. Once you start managing yourself, the relationships around you start changing by themselves. I want to make one thing clear, because it's a question that's probably on everyone's mind watching this. Silent power does not mean you are quiet about everything. You submit to everything. You never express yourself. Quite the contrary. When these 5 points are in practice, you become someone who knows far more clearly when to speak, when to withdraw, what to ignore, and what to react to. It's not about talking quieter. It's about knowing when to talk and how loud to talk. Let's start with the first point when you're ready. The 5 main ideas. Guard your attention. Attention is a resource that is spent, just like money. You won't know what you have at the end of the day if you don't consciously pay attention to where it is going. When you lose money, you see it in your bank account. When you lose attention, all you notice is fatigue and the feeling of, I didn't get anything done today. And just as something rare is perceived as more valuable, attention becomes more valuable when it's given sparingly and selectively. If you give everyone the same intensity of attention all the time, then you haven't really given anyone anything special. Value is partly born out of scarcity. Let me give you some examples of how you lose this in your day-to-day life. Someone you don't know leaves a comment on your social media criticizing your work, your looks, or a decision you made. You've already got your phone in your hand, your fingers on the keyboard, and you've already made up the defensive sentence in your head. They will never think of you again, but you will have wasted your evening over their one sentence. Second example, you have a coworker who is always saying something is urgent. You try to respond to every message immediately, fearing you'll be viewed as unhelpful if you don't. But the more you rush, the more that person learns, without asking, that your time is cheaper than theirs. A third example, from your own home. You get home in the evening, phone in hand, and you answer a message while you watch TV, and you talk to the person next to you, all together. You're not really there for any of it, and the other person knows you only showed up halfway. So why does this work like this? Because the human mind values less what is most readily available. Someone who replies 10 times to 10 different people on 10 different subjects in one day cannot put real weight behind any of them. But someone who responds thoughtfully and takes his or her time with just 2 of those 10 people gets a lot more respect in those 2 relationships. Scattered attention is worth less attention. Gathered attention is worth more attention. One important caveat. Protecting your attention isn't about tuning out real feedback or someone who genuinely needs help. The most common mistake is to apply this principle to cases where there is confusion between boundary and indifference. It's not that you don't care about people. It's about choosing what you care about. One more thing worth mentioning. Protecting your attention eventually becomes a reflex. At first it seems like a deliberate act because you're doing something you're not used to, but after a few weeks, waiting 10 seconds and not getting caught up in an unnecessary comment is your default, just like a muscle gets stronger with use. Let's also look at this from the other end. What happens when you focus on something that matters to you? A skill you're building, or a relationship you care about? That area grows and deepens and solidifies. Attention is a force that shapes what it flows into, like water. Spray it 100 ways and nothing really gets wet. Turn it on a few things and you'll see real transformation there. This is why protecting your attention is not selfish. It is an act of prioritization. Do this little exercise today. Before you reply to a notification, a message, a comment, count to 10 seconds. This small pause turns the reflexive response into a conscious choice, and any reaction provided by choice is far more powerful than one provided automatically, because now it is you making the choice, not the moment. As a second step, at the end of each day, ask yourself one question. Where did the biggest chunk of my attention go today? And does that line up with what I really care about? Ask this a few days in a row, and you'll see much more clearly where your attention has been leaking. Silence as a strategic weapon. Now let's go to the second point, which is a natural extension of protecting your attention. After you have decided what to focus on, the next step is to determine when and how to show it outwardly. More often than not, to respond to something immediately is to validate it. Instant replies to someone send them this message unknowingly. Your words have an instant effect on me. That is a far greater transfer of power than it looks. Silence in this place is not an escape. It is, if used correctly, one of your most powerful strategic moves. Here's the scenario. You get an annoying, contentious message on your phone. Your gut instinct is to respond right back, in kind. But if you reply an hour later with a cooler head, two things happen. You write a more exact sentence and you send the message, "You can't get me going whenever you feel like it." Second example, someone unjustly criticizes you in a meeting, and everyone expects you to defend yourself immediately. But if you stop and calmly say, "I need to think about this," they see you haven't lost control. The funny thing is, the one who gets most respect isn't the loudest voice, it's the one who knows when to be quiet. 3. You are with someone you have just met, and you start talking excitedly about your plans and ideas, which are still only half-formed. Every detail you publish shows something not yet ready for the criticism or indifference of the outside world. So it keeps the idea a little more to yourself, and it gets room to develop without being shaped by other people's premature opinions. How is this done? Information is heavy, and every word you don't need is a little piece of that heaviness slipping from your hands. When a person breaks their plan, intention, or breaking point early, they make themselves defenseless, while someone bringing the same information to the right time determines for themselves when and how to use it. The warning here about misuse is important. Silence should not be a cover for avoiding a conversation that needs to happen. If there is a real problem in a relationship or partnership, silence is not a solution. It is only a postponement, and it usually makes the problem bigger. The distinction is between avoidance and choice. Avoidance is silence because you're afraid. Choice is silence because you're choosing when and how to speak. There's another layer to silence that's worth noting. Every moment you're not talking is in fact a moment you're listening. And listening is a much more strategic act than most people realize. But if you stay quiet and actually listen when someone else is talking, they'll end up telling you a lot more themselves, their priorities, their concerns, what they really want, often without even realizing it. You're not talking. You're just listening very carefully, and you end up with more information than the person who's talking. You don't have to hurry to use that info either. It's going to be in your hands when the right time comes. Today's exercise. Write down your immediate reaction to a divisive issue that really bothers you, but don't send it. Write it down in your notes or on a piece of paper, wait for an hour, and read it again. Chances are you never send it, or write a much clearer, much stronger version. Try this throughout a day. In a conversation, before you answer, say the other person's sentence again in your mind. Even such a slight delay makes a significant difference in what you say. This small habit, over time, turns into one of the most enduring sources of power you can have. Mid-video summary. So far, we have talked about two things. 1. Consciously choosing where you focus your attention. 2. Using silence as a strategy and not an escape. Those two alone make a tremendous difference for most people. Maybe, as you heard, a few moments from your own life came to mind. This is completely normal. These are things that almost all of us do on a daily basis. The thing is, when you notice them, not to judge yourself about it, but to remind yourself that there's a different option next time. Beating yourself up doesn't speed up change. It usually does the opposite. Guilt is energy. You don't have to make a new choice. But now, we get down to the real meat of the matter, because the next point directly affects when you will be seen, when you will retreat, and therefore, how you are perceived by others. And this is something that most people never consciously think about in their whole life. Selective visibility. Someone who is available to everybody all the time ends up being worthless. That sounds harsh, but is true. It's not that they mean to do so. That's how the mind works. Our brains shove into the background what is always there because they never have to think about losing it. Meanwhile, a presence that can be hard to get at occupies a more vivid, worth accounting for place in the mind. This isn't about trying to be hard to get, to look unapproachable, or to chase people. It's about tending to your own rhythm and keeping it. Have you ever felt the pressure of being always on in a relationship that you need to reply to every text within seconds? This pressure slowly disconnects you from your own life because you start to live by someone else's expectations instead of your own schedule. After a time on the other side, they know you'll always be there, and that makes you less special. Second example, do you tend to say yes to every invitation no matter what because it feels awkward to say no? This is the opposite of selective visibility. It's giving your time and energy to other people's expectations. And curiously, the person who always says yes becomes less valuable, more readily available in people's eyes. There's also an important misuse warning here. This does not mean you should make yourself seem inaccessible on purpose so people want you more or get jealous of you. Playing a game and ignoring someone's message is manipulation, and sooner or later it's noticed and trust is taken down with it. The goal is to create a real balance of priorities, to spend time on what you really want, and to say no to what you don't. You can see it in your own family too. Is there a family member who always says, "Of course I'll be there," to every gathering, every invite, every meetup? Their presence over time is familiar, mundane. But that person who sometimes misses for a good reason and who gives it their all when they are there is so much more appreciated and valued each time. It's not about deliberately trying to disappoint people. It's about making your presence feel like a choice rather than a reflex. There's a deeper side to this too. Selective visibility really is about being honest with yourself. Every time you can't say no, you're telling your own time and energy you don't matter. Flip that around. Spend your time on what truly matters to you. And people around you notice while you start taking up more space in your own life. This is not arrogance or distance. This is simply respecting your own presence. Here's an exercise you can try today. This week, accept an invitation because you really want to, not because saying no feels hard, or turn one down because you really don't want to go. This simple, seemingly small distinction makes a fundamental difference in how you are perceived over time, because when people sense that your yes is a real choice, they value it much more. Go one better. For 1 week, before you say yes or no to anything, ask yourself a question. Am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing this to avoid discomfort? Know your emotional triggers. The fourth point is a little less vulnerable to the outside world. You should be seeing a pattern by now, protecting your attention, knowing how to stay silent, and being selectively visible. But what rises from inside, you can take your power away too, which is why this point looks inward. When someone says something and you have a sharp reaction inside you, that is the highest risk of losing your power. You are no longer choosing your reaction. The trigger is choosing it for you. The first step in reclaiming it is to identify your own triggers. Emotional triggers are usually echoes from the past. The reaction is often disproportionate to the event because you've likely felt this exact thing before, as a child, an old relationship, a past job. So that when the mind meets with a similar feeling again, it automatically turns on the old reaction. Just knowing it is enough to make it less intense because you now have an answer to the question, why did this get so big? Think about what happens to you when someone calls you lazy. Maybe you feel an immediate urge to prove yourself, or that sentence repeats in your head all day. Just asking yourself, why did this affect me so much, is enough to slow your reaction down. Most of the time, what makes us angry isn't the words, it's the old wound that those words touched. Second example, a friend who is always in crisis but gives almost nothing in return. When you try to set a boundary, a sudden wave of guilt might rise up. That guilt is a trigger too, and naming it makes the boundary much easier. Again, the same misuse warning applies. Recognizing your triggers does not mean you should suppress your emotions. The point isn't to refuse to feel, it's to notice where that feeling is pulling you. It's completely human and totally normal to feel angry, sad, or hurt. The point is not to deny the feeling, it is to consciously choose the reaction that feeling creates. Triggers are not only in negative times. Sometimes too much excitement or too much need for approval is a trigger too. Like saying yes to an opportunity immediately without thinking. It's not only about managing anger when you recognize your triggers, it's also about keeping excessive enthusiasm in check, because both can take you away from clarity. There is another advantage here too. You begin to learn over time the sorts of situations that trigger you. Think of 3 or 4 moments from the past that really rocked your world. Is there a common thread? Perhaps a fear of being undervalued or of losing control. When you identify that theme, the next time you hear it, it isn't a surprise anymore. It's a familiar guest, which is always easier to deal with. Here's today's exercise. Choose a moment that triggers you, and before you react, silently to yourself, name what you are feeling. Saying simply, "I'm angry right now," or "I feel hurt right now," or "I feel overlooked right now," creates a small but powerful gap between the feeling and the reaction. And that is the space where you reclaim your power. To amplify this exercise, go back to that moment at the end of the day and ask yourself, what did I choose to do in that gap? Succeed by being patient. And now we arrive at the last point, the one that binds the other 4 and makes them last over time. Patience. One day, you can guard your attention, and the next day, you can let it go. This is because change is not a straight line. Patience wins in this jagged process. The chess player is a patient man who waits for his opponent to make a mistake rather than rushing a move. A panicked move is usually the most costly on the board. Most of life's areas work in the same way. When a false, unfounded rumor is spread about you, the first impulse is to defend yourself immediately, to explain yourself to each person individually. But most of the time, as time goes by, the truth will naturally come out, and staying calm without doing anything is the strongest thing you can do. Another situation. Someone takes your idea, your effort, your work. The first reaction is anger. The second is the impulse to tell everyone right away. But a man who works with patience works his energy himself, and not to argue. For he knows that the work will tell in a year who the source is and who the copy is, not the argument. Just as a seed does not bear fruit on the day it is planted, no effort pays off immediately. Patience is not passive surrender. Patience is trust in the process. I have to add a balance warning here as well, because this might be the most easily misunderstood point of all. Calculated inaction does not mean never speaking out against actual injustice. Patience is not remaining silent when silence allows injustice to grow, when silence actually harms someone, when the longer you stay quiet, the worse it gets. It's avoidance. Patience is the ability to decide when to wait and when to act directly and clearly. Not all silence is power. Some silence is just fear. And learning to tell the difference between the two is the most mature part of this point. The modern life keeps teaching us speed. Respond quickly, decide quickly, react quickly, or you'll fall behind. But the quickest reactions almost never yield the most lasting results. The biggest rift in a relationship often comes from a sentence spoken in haste. Here, patience is not a moral talking point, it is a practical advantage. The person who acts quickly often evaluates the information he has incompletely. The person who waits sees that same information much more completely. Maybe the least understood thing about patience is this: patience is not passive. A patient person is not doing nothing. They are using their energy in invisible preparation instead of a visible reaction. The person who remains silent when a rumor spreads keeps on working, keeps on producing. On the outside, it looks like waiting, but inside, it is a constant building. That is why patience is one of the most enduring forms of power in time. So here's your exercise for today. Instead of reacting, intentionally create a situation where you will wait 24 hours. Find something that annoys you but is not urgent, and let that one day pass without reacting, just watching. Chances are your opinion will change during those 24 hours, and the answer you finally give will be a lot clearer and a lot more powerful than your first instinct. A question to ask yourself in that waiting period: will this still matter this much a year from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. That answer makes it a lot easier to decide to wait. Conclusion, extended summary. So let's put them all together, because hearing them as 5 separate ideas can easily make us scatter them, but really they're part of one idea. Watch your attention, because where you direct it reveals what you truly care about. Silence is a strategy. Every word that is not needed is a small transfer of power. Be selectively visible, because that constant, unlimited availability depreciates your value over time. Know your emotional triggers, because your own reaction is the most real freedom you can have. And win with patience. Panicked moves are the most expensive moves you'll ever make. These 5 points are connected. Protect your attention, and it's easier to hold your mouth. Silence makes you more selectively visible. Selective visibility limits your exposure to your triggers. As you become more aware of your triggers, your patience increases, and patience again makes it clear where you should put your attention over and over again. They don't work miracles individually, but they build up a power that isn't loud but is real, a quiet power. You do not have to be perfect in practicing these 5 points. Some days your attention will be all over the place. Some days your patience will be shot. This isn't failure. It is part of the process. It's not about beating yourself up at the end of that day, but making a small correction for tomorrow. Silent power isn't born of perfectionism. It's born of gentle but firm consistency. Apply this to a human life and see the same things, the same people, the same difficulties are what happens to everyone. The difference is reflected in how those events are reacted to. The person who guards their attention, employs silence strategically, understands their own rhythm, recognizes their triggers, and opts for patience, will emerge from that very same hard day so much less worn down and so much more composed. It's not about changing the outside world, it's about changing your response to it. And this is the reason why these 5 points can be applied by anyone, at any age, at any place. They're not a personality test, they're a map of habits, and there's no all or nothing to them. It's not that you're perfect, but just a little more aware than you were yesterday. What counts is that, over time, you improve your average in these 5 areas. A tangible first step. These are not tactics but habits, built only by repetition. Don't think you have to do all 5 today. Pick the point that you went, "I need this the most" when you were watching, and just start with that one. Whatever it is, take one small step toward it, today, right now. Even writing it down helps. In one sentence, note the point you chose and the small step you will take today. Writing something down makes you much more likely to do it than just thinking about it. Small, repeated steps last much longer than big, one-time decisions. Ask yourself, on a 1 to 10 scale, how much silent power you use today. Even this simple check gives you a reason to shoot a little higher tomorrow. Last, worst of those 5? Tell me in the comments. I'm always interested to see which point gets the most resonance. helps me know what to dig deeper into next time. If you really got something out of this video, don't forget to like it, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe, because next time I'll show how these 5 points come together into a single way of being with even deeper examples. One last question to leave you with. Which do you think is harder, silence or withdrawal? Both seem passive at first sight, but both are active choices. One controls your words, the other your presence. Knowing which is harder for you shows you where you need to do more work. One last thing to remember. Power is built more often than not through noise, but quietly, patiently, consistently. And any little thing you do today can be the first link in a chain of big change you'll see tomorrow. See you in the next video.